Hello and welcome to Ask a Pastor. My name is Kevin Yant and I'm with Pastor Mike Reed from Grace Fellowship Church. Pastor, today the question has to deal with the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Would you care to make some comments on that, and how should a Christian interact with this?
Sure. I think the first thing I would do is talk about what you said there at the end. What to do with the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge seems like a silly question. Who cares? I mean, do what you want. See, I think we do too much of that as Christians. I think we interact with the world around us without much thought, and we just kind of go on autopilot. And I think it's worthy to consider everything we do, worthy considering that through Scripture, through who God is. And so there's two things I would look at with the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, and one is, first let me say that ALS is a brutal disease. I've never known anybody to die from it, but I've seen videos of people that have had it, and I recognize that it's just a very brutal disease and very debilitating and tough to watch someone you love die from. And so I don't want to minimize that in any way. And at the same time, I do want to say this, that ALS is one way to die. And we are all going to die. Ever since sin entered the world, wages of sin is death, so now our physical bodies will all die, and there's many ways that happens. ALS happens to be one of them. And the question is, and so I want to say that I get how devastating that might be for someone. I don't want to be insensitive, and I don't believe I am being, even though you might be hearing that. But it's one way to die, and there's many ways of dying, and the question is, ought we as Christians try to be curing any kind of disease? Our efforts be to raise money to cure diseases, to cure something that you can't cure, death? We're all going to die. Our job as Christians is to spread the gospel. So our time, our energy, and our resources ought to be used towards the spreading of the gospel first and foremost. And so that's not what happens with the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. I'm not much for social media. I'm kind of a dinosaur, but I do enough social media. Then the people I run with are Christians mainly, so the people I follow are lots of Christians or professing Christians, and everybody seems quick to do the Ice Bucket Challenge. Pastors I follow, and youth pastors and the youth ministries, and I wonder, what are you trying to do as a Christian? Aren't we to be spreading the gospel? And that's what our efforts ought to be pointed towards. And so I think trying to cure any kind of disease is misguided effort. The second thing is, as we do the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, I would have us to consider and understand that one of the ways they're looking at curing ALS is doing embryonic stem cell research. And embryonic stem cell research comes from aborted babies. That's where you get these stem cells, from the aborted babies. And so you're trying to keep people alive and using people that have been murdered in order to get a cure to keep people alive, and that doesn't seem to go together to me. That if we are out picketing abortion clinics and then we're giving to ALS, we are fighting against ourselves. And understanding too that adult stem cell research, ALS, they're having some success, I've read, in adult stem cell usage, which doesn't require anybody to die. You take that from a living adult versus embryonic stem cell research. So what is the money going to that we're giving? So anything we're out there raising money for as Christians, what is that money being used for? And again, number one goal is the perpetuation of the gospel. So those are a couple of levels I would look at it, is what are we to be doing with our time, and do we really want to raise money for something that supports murdering infants?
Great. So we've also seen some people, a young man in our church that is issuing a gospel challenge as opposed to an ALS challenge, which I think is good. Chris
Purcell has put up a video of him preaching the gospel, and he's challenging all of his followers or friends or whatever they are on those different social media to do the same. If you're a Christian, I'm challenging you to get on there, do a video preaching the gospel, and get that out there. And as far as I know, as of taping of this, nobody had responded to doing that of the people that follow Chris, and yet I'm pretty confident if Chris had got up there and done an Ice Bucket Challenge and challenged 5 of his best friends, most of them would have done it. And so I want us to consider as Christians, I think it's so important that we don't just be a part of the culture blindly. We think about what we're doing, and raising money to cure disease. You can't cure death. We're all going to die. The only way, life everlasting, and that only comes through the preaching of the gospel. That ought to be our focus.
Great. That's an excellent focus. Thank you for the answer.